Alright, welcome to COVID log number 2 of the year. Today I'll just be briefly talking about what progress I made since last week following my training regimen that I also made last week. As you can see, I solved like 22 problems this week, which was like around 3 problems a day. And I think that's pretty cool. Alright, just as a brief reminder, here was my coding strategy. Basically, I would do this for every single tag or topic on Codeforces. And I would just start with an arbitrary rating, do a problem at that rating, and if I failed to solve it in like under 15 minutes, I would just decrement the rating by 100 points and then do the whole thing again. However, if I did manage to solve it without looking at the editorial, I would increase my rating by 100 points and then do it again. That way I would always be working at the level where I would feel the most challenged, but also not make the problems super hard that I can't do them. Over the week, I also made some changes to this plan. With the first one being that I would only do Division 2 Codeforces problems for that certain rating. And that was because Division 1 problems are significantly harder, even if the rating on Codeforces is the same. And Division 3 problems and those in the miscellaneous categories aren't exactly high quality. Not to be mean or anything, but yeah, the Division 3 problems typically had worse editorials, and some problem statements had like obvious grammar mistakes. So obviously, I just stuck with Division 2. And the other change that I made was this third option, which was staying at the current rating. And I would do that if I thought of a solution, or thought of like most of the solution, or my implementation was basically on the right track, but it was taking way too long, like over an hour. So once I figured out how to solve that problem, I would just stay at the same rating and do another problem at that rating. And that's how I progressed. Here were some other changes that I made, including looking at the codes of those legendary grandmasters on Codeforces, and then see what parts of my code could be improved to get to their level. And then if I found any changes, I would just go back into my code, change it, and then submit it again. And that way, I would basically internalize what they were doing without just typing it out and then forgetting about it in a few days. Also, I made a change with the time limit thing. It wouldn't be exactly 15 minutes, but just until I gave up on the problem, which was around 15 minutes as well, so that didn't exactly change anything. And also, when I failed to solve a problem, I wouldn't just look at the editorial and code it immediately. I would just look at the solution, do another problem, come back, and then code it. That way I would have to remember what the solution was before I actually implemented it. So, how did I go about doing this? Well, I basically started at my weakest topic and worked my way upwards. So I would first make sure Combinatorics wasn't my weakest by bringing it up somewhere over here, and then doing geometry, and then doing DP, and so on. So how did that turn out? Well, since I saved all of my training data, here's my graph for Combinatorics. This line here just represents the rating I ended up at after my calibration phase. That was 1,500. So I'm going to draw a reference line here just so you can see my progress. As you can see, in the first few days, there wasn't actually any significant progress. But after here, it just shot straight up. It went up 300, 400 rating points in one go. That was pretty amazing because I wasn't expecting myself to improve so fast in 2-3 days. So now that Combinatorics wasn't my weakest topic, I decided to go to geometry. And basically the same thing happened. At first, progress was basically stagnant, and then randomly it just decided to shoot up again. I just thought the problems were getting really easy, and I was like, oh, this could be solved and that. And I don't know, I just thought of the solutions quicker, and I implemented them faster as well. So yeah, that's how I was able to go up that many points. After geometry, I also did DP, and I only did this for 1.5 days so far, so really you don't see any progress. It's mostly just flat at this point. But hopefully things will turn around in a few days. So something seems to actually be working here, because I'm improving. Like combinatorics, if you look at my starting rating versus my ending, that's like plus 400 points, which is very significant in terms of Codeforce's ratings. Same thing with geometry, it increased by 400 points by the time I was done with it. In addition, by looking at other people's solutions, I also learned a bunch of miscellaneous coding tricks that I soon just added on into my own code to make it even better. Some of these included making internal functions, like the thing you see on the right here. Also, doing one index prefix sum so you don't have to check for out-of-boundary things. Also, a next permutation function for generating permutations of an array instead of doing that yourself, which is really slow. And a bunch of other things that I won't get into right now because it's probably overly technical. Surprisingly, these problems didn't require too many advanced algorithms to solve. Most of it was just based on how well you were able to interpret the problem and come up with some insight to solve it. So it looks like this coding strategy seems to be working, except there were also some disadvantages that I noticed as I was doing this. First of all, it is very intensive because this Codeforce's ladder thing is meant to keep you at your highest level at all times. So it required a lot of focus and a lot of mental processing as well. Typically, I would have around 3 hours of peak performance where my brain was working and I could actually code stuff. And after that, progress just drastically slowed down. So even though I was doing like 6 hours a day on days where there was no school, the first 3 hours were probably the most precious of the 6. Also, by following this schedule and strategy, this week was also the first week that I actually missed a membean session. Keep in mind that I typically don't miss these sessions. Like in freshman and sophomore year, I've never missed a single one. And junior year, I've never missed one either. So it's pretty interesting how intense I'm coding here that I literally forget to do membean. And also because I've actually have a schedule now, I've realized that coding isn't purely for fun as it used to be. Before, I would just look at a problem, literally think about it like all the time, and then maybe just code it up like 3-4 days later. But that's not very efficient if you want to get better really fast. So with my training regimen, things just got a lot more serious, like really quickly. But then again, it's still pretty enjoyable because solving problems and thinking about them and implementing it, it's all like really fun stuff. Also, the majority of my life is coding at this point. Like even though school takes up 60% of my time, in school I'm still thinking about coding, so that's still coding, just not physically coding. But I'll stick with this. These cons aren't too bad. Like I can work with these if it can give me advantages like I mentioned on the previous slide. We'll see how my DP thing goes, and next week I'll report back. Thanks for watching.